How's it going, everybody? I'm Josh, KI6NAZ, and today I have a proper ham radio crash course. I'm going to go through every section of the ham radio technician exam, one video per section, as concise as I can do it to provide you the most information to give you what you need to know the answer to the question, but also pass that exam. So without further ado, we're starting with T4, section T4, and I'll explain why right after the drop. So if these videos on getting your technician license were helpful to you, the best way to show it to me and tell me that you liked it was to give me a thumbs up and subscribe, because I'm going to be going through all the sections, and that's going to take you through 2022, and then we're going to do it again because I think I have found the winning equation to make this easy and fun and, more importantly, fast for me to produce. So let me explain the information I have. Since this big boom that we experienced in 2020 of people testing online, I now have anonymous test data. I don't know names or anybody like that, but I know massive amounts of metrics on which sections and which questions people had problems with their ham radio tests. So with that, while I'm making this video, I'll know exactly what to point out some of the trips and holes that people fell into and how to avoid them. So without further ado, we're going right in. We're starting with section T4. Sub-element T4 is all about putting a shack together. It's going to teach you things like connecting microphones, reducing unwanted emissions, connecting a computer, RF grounding, connecting digital equipment, and connecting an SWR meter. Now, I will be using hamstudy.org for all of these videos. It's free to use. You can make an account very easily, and with that, you can go through, take practice exams, and it will tell you when you're having issues, what you're having issues with, and guide your studying specifically to sections that will help you out in passing the test. Okay, starting things off, T4A01, there are 24 questions in this section. What must be considered to determine the minimum current capacity needed for a transceiver's power supply? A, efficiency of the transmitter at full power output. B, receiver and control circuit power. C, power supply regulation and heat dissipation. Or D, all of these choices are correct. The answer is D. I'm not going to hide any of the questions from you. You're going to see the answer right away. Hopefully you'll burn that into your memory as you're watching the questions come up in my walking through them. All of these things are going to be important. The efficiency of your transmitter at full power, those are all things you can search for online for the given transceiver that you're going to be using. The receiver and control circuit power, that is just ambient draw of the receiver. Power supply regulation and heat dissipation. Also important to know, that's going to be a factor of the manufacturer of your power supply. T4A02, how might a computer be used as part of an amateur radio station? A, for logging contacts and contact information. B, for sending and or receiving CW, that's Morse code. C, for generating and decoding digital signals. Or D, all of these choices are correct. So here's a bit of a warning too. We started off with 2, all of these choices are correct, and it's D, by the way. Be careful with these. Just because you see a D, all of these choices are correct on any of your ham radio tests, it's likely that it may not be. I'm wondering, I'll do the math on it, and I'll tell you what the odds are the 50-50 splits are actually either a positive choice to go with that or not a good idea to go with the all of these choices are correct. And of course, all of these are correct. You can do all of the above with a computer, which is one of the reasons why I drag computers into the field for operating ham radio. T4A03, why should wiring between the power source and radio be heavy gauge wire and kept as short as possible? A, to avoid voltage falling below that needed for proper operation. B, to improve or to provide a good counterpoise for the antenna. C, to avoid RF interference. Or D, all these choices are correct. So there's a D, don't go with the all these choices correct. It's A, to avoid voltage falling below that needed for proper operation. If your gauge is too small, that could be a problem. If your wire is too long, that can actually add resistance to the line, which could make it not function as it should. Heavy gauge wire in this case is going to allow more current through it, and it's going to have less resistance over a given length. So always make sure you're using an appropriate gauge for the power that you want to transfer. T4A04. Which computer sound card port is connected to a transceiver's headphone or speaker output for operating digital modes? A, headphone output. B, the mute. C, microphone or line input. D, PCI or SDI? The answer is C. And I want to make sure you understand how this works. Your radio's speaker is the output, should be connected to the microphone of your computer. The sound going out of the radio must be ingested by your computer's microphone to be able to get decoded or whatever into the digital mode or however you're going to use it and display it to the screen. The flip side is also true. Speaker out of your computer needs to be ingested by your radio and transmitted. T4A05. What is the proper location for an external SWR meter? And that stands for standing wave ratio meter. This is the meter that shows you the match to your antenna from your radio. A, in series with the feed line being the coax or however you're feeding it, between the transmitter and antenna. B, in series with the station's ground. C, in parallel with with the push-to-talk line and the antenna. D, in series with the power supply cable as close as possible to the radio. No, you want it to go in between the antenna and the transmitter or the transceiver of your whatever you're using. You need to use the SWR meter to show what the standing wave ratio is, your match to your antenna to your transceiver. Transceivers have a standard 50 ohms, usually coax connector, and we want to get as close to that with your antenna as possible. So we will use the SWR meter to show that, and we'll make any adjustments we need to if there's an issue that shows up. You're generally aiming for under 2 to 1, close as 1 to 1 as possible. 1:1 is kind of what you're aiming for. T4A06, which of the following connections might be used between a voice transceiver and a computer for digital operation? A, receive and transmit mode, status, and location. B, antenna and RF power. C, receive audio, transmit audio, and push to talk. C, NMEA, GPS location, and DC power. The answer here is C, receive audio, transmit audio, and push to talk. And again, very important to understand, we're talking about the speaker and microphone. The speaker and microphone flipped so that they can talk to each other, but then you also need something in the middle that tells the radio or the computer when to start sending that information, and usually we use a PTT. So the computer PTTs push to talks the radio opens up, starts receiving the information that's played out via the speaker of the computer and then sent on its merry way via RF. T4A07, how is a computer's sound card used when conducting digital communications? A, the sound card communicates between the computer, CPU, and the video display. B, the sound card records the audio frequency of the video display. C, sound card provides audio to the radio's microphone input and converts the received audio to digital form. D, all of these choices are correct. No, it's C. The sound card provides the audio to the radio's microphone input and converts the received audio to the digital form. So back before we were saying you need to send speaker information out of the computer into the microphone of the radio to be transmitted. And that's what this is talking about. Now this is a bit tricky because they want to keep it small. The latter half says and converts received audio to digital form. They're talking about the received audio on the radio, incoming received audio that gets pulled in to the microphone port on the computer and then turned into a digital display. T4A08, which of the following conductors provides the lowest impedance to RF signals? A, round stranded wire. B, round copper-clad steel wire. C, twisted pair cable. Or D, flat strap. Flat strap is the answer. D, it has a huge surface area. You want to use that whenever you can when grounding your station or your antenna. T4A09, which of the following could you use to cure distorted audio caused by RF current on the shield of a microphone cable? A, a bandpass filter. B, a low-pass filter. C, a preamplifier. Or D, a ferrite choke. The answer is D, ferrite choke. Now, this isn't a ferrite choke, but I am holding a toroid core. I've used these with microphone cables, wrap them through as many times as you can and still have appreciable use of the microphone. This works just as well. A ferrite choke is usually two sides of black plastic clamshells with basically this same material inside. This is basically iron filings that is covered in epoxy or resin, and you use that to slap around the cable, wire, whatever. This is talking about microphones, but you can do this to all of your electronics. And in fact, I often have to bring my noise down. T4A10. What is the source of a high-pitched whine that varies with engine speed in a mobile transceiver's receive audio? A, the ignition system. B, the alternator. C, electric fuel pump. D, the anti-lock braking system controllers. That's the alternator. The alternator specifically is the one they're referring to because it changes with engine speed. That's going to be something that is, you'll notice that if you have a loud alternator, it'll create this crazy whine noise, and it will fluctuate and change in tone if the alternator is the problem as you change RPM of the engine. T4A11. Where should the negative return connection of a mobile transceiver's power cable be connected? A, at the battery or engine block ground strap. B, at the antenna mount. C, at any metal part of the vehicle. D, through the transceiver's mounting bracket. The answer here is A, at the battery or engine block ground strap. And I would like to make a bit of a note on that latter engine block ground strap thing. On a lot of cars where your battery is, your 12-volt accessory battery for the car, there is going to be a negative terminal, and there will likely be some kind of ground connection to chassis right by that negative terminal. On most cars, not all of them. I connect my radios directly to that ground connection. If it's good enough for all the other electronics in your car, it's likely good enough for your ham radio as well. There's nothing wrong with going directly to the negative. I have found, though, that going directly to that ground connection is usually a better idea. Okay, so that was the T4As. We're going to go right over to the T4Bs now. Now, T4B is about antenna radio practices and station setup and actually using the radio and some of the features of your radio. T4B01, what may happen if a transmitter is operated with the microphone gain set too high? A, the output power might be too high. B, the output signal might become distorted. C, the frequency might vary. Or D, the SWR may increase. Specifically with gain, it's talking about your audio signal. If you crank up that gain too high, your audio can become distorted. A good way of hearing yourself is if you have a monitor function on your radio. If you turn on the monitor function, start talking into some headphones, you will hear yourself sound jarbled and you'll need to back off the gain. T4B02, which of the following can be used to enter the operating frequency on a modern transceiver? A, the keypad or VFO knob. B, the CTCSS or DTMF encoder. C, the automatic frequency control. Or D, all of these choices are correct. There's really only one choice here. It's A, the keypad, or the VFO knob. And VFO stands for Variable Frequency Oscillator. And it's something like I have on my 7300 behind me. But many modern handhelds have a keypad or maybe a little dial on the top that you can use to change the frequency. You can consider that a VFO as well. There is a note here. The CTCSS or DTMF encoder is tricksy language. You enter sometimes DTMF commands via the keypad. So this one's a bit tricky. You want to make sure that you're saying for frequency changes on a modern transceiver, it's the keypad or the VFO knob. T4B03, what is the purpose of the squelch control on a transceiver? A, to set the highest level of volume desired. B, to set the transmitter's power level. C, to adjust the automatic gain control. D, to mute the receiver output noise when no signal is being received. It is D, mute the output noise when no signal is being received. This is used most often with FM transceivers, something you'd use on VHF or UHF. Your handhelds, your mobile radios likely have squelch turned on and you're likely using it. It makes that noise completely disappear until someone is transmitting. You can use it on HF, but generally we don't because sometimes we want to hear those voices that are way, way down in the noise. So we generally don't use the squelch when we're operating HF. T4B04, What is a way to enable quick access to a favorite frequency on your transceiver? A. Enable the CTCSS tones. B. Store the frequency in a memory channel. C. Disable the CTCSS tones. D. Use the scan mode to select the desired frequency. Store the frequency in a memory channel. This is also a tricksy question. D says use the scan mode to select a desired frequency. Scan modes are great. I use them when I'm in a new area or just sometimes looking around to find new and interesting frequencies, and you should do that. But once you've found those frequencies, make sure you lock them into a memory channel on your favorite HT, or any HT. T4B05, which of the following would reduce ignition interference to a receiver? A. Change the frequency slightly. B. Decrease the squelch setting. C. Turn on the noise blanker. D. Use the RIT control. Specifically, this is turn on the noise blanker. The engine noise is going to create kind of a wide-banded noise that will wash out an entire space, and you use the noise blanker to kill that noise. If you are having a very serious spike, I'm sure there'll be a question later, we would use some of these other methods to knock down one specific area of interference. T4B06, which of the following controls could be used if the voice pitch of a single sideband signal seems to be high or low? A. The AGC or limiter. B. The bandwidth selection. C. Tone squelch. Or D. The receiver RIT or clarifier. What this means specifically is if you are on what you think is the frequency of operation, if you are on like 14.2050 megahertz, you're pretty much in the 20-meter space, and you hear somebody that's right there but off a little bit. They could have drift in their radio or something like that. They could be using a boat anchor, or maybe they just bump the VFO a little bit. But you know that you want to stay on .250. That's where the action is, or that's where the QSO is that you could be having with other people. Maybe you're in a rag chew. Well, using the RIT allows you to kind of adjust that off a little bit so you can find a balancing point where that individual will still sound good, but you stay on the main frequency, which is 14.250. T4B08, what is the advantage of having multiple receive bandwidth choices on a multi-mode transceiver? A. Permits monitoring several modes at once. B. Permits noise or interference reduction by selecting a bandwidth matching the mode. C. Increases the number of frequencies that can be stored in memory. D. Increases the amount of offset between receive and transmit frequencies. This is a very good question. If you have a radio that does CW, Morse code, and single sideband, and digital modes, when you're using CW, you may want to add a very tight filter of, say, 400 hertz. Single sideband, though, that's a 2400 hertz filter that you're going to be applying. You can make that a bit wider, but most of the time all you're going to pick up by doing that is more noise, as you have a wider space for that noise to come in your receiver and then into your ears. So keep it tight with exactly the mode of operation, although if you are using digital, sometimes it pays to open that up as wide as possible and let your computer sort it out. T4B09, which of the following is an appropriate receive filter bandwidth for minimizing noise and interference for single sideband reception? I kind of already mentioned it. You kind of know where this is going. A. 500 hertz. B. 1000 hertz. C. 2400 hertz. D. 5000 hertz. It's 2400 hertz. T4B10, which of the following is an appropriate receive filter bandwidth for minimizing noise and interference for CW reception? A. 500 hertz, B. 1000 hertz, C. 2400 hertz, or D. 5000 hertz. My eyes needs to be a little brighter here, I think, on this screen. So 500 hertz is the answer. I mentioned 400 hertz before. There are radios that have even tighter filtering on CW, and some people like that, particularly if it's a very weak signal. There's nothing wrong to have that tool in your arsenal if you do, though, but 500 hertz is the standard for Morse code. T4B11, what is the function of automatic gain control, or AGC? A. To keep received audio relatively constant. B. To protect an antenna from lightning. C. To eliminate RF on the station's cabling. D. An asynchronous I think Leia had this one. Goniometer control used for antenna matching. So there's only one A to keep the receive audio relatively constant. AGCs are usually internal to the radio. They're not external things, and a lot of what's mentioned B, C, and D are external things. All its job is, and really it's kind of depending on which mode you're using. If you're using single sideband, then you're probably going to want to have your AGC set to slow or medium. If you're using digital, you may want to be as fast as you possibly can. And what that means is, when your radio kicks up from a high signal, somebody's talking, and let's say they've got a really loud signal, and as they let off, an AGC fast will just drop your noise floor back down, your receiver's front end back down. If you're using an AGC slow, it's going to have a more of a gradual drop to it. If it's just human voice, the conversation they're in, an AGC slow actually helps kind of smooth things out and makes it a little bit more pleasant to listen to for longer periods. T4B12, which of the following could be used to remove power line noise or ignition noise? A, squelch, B, noise blanker, C, notch filter, or D, all of these choices are correct. The answer is B, noise blanker. Usually that's done through a process called digital signal processing, DSP. I will caution that while yes, it will help the audio sound better, and it may look like it is removing some of the noise, it's not getting rid of the noise. Your radio is being inundated by ignition noise, in this case, power ignition noise, power line noise, car ignition noise. And if you don't figure out how to reduce that, your radio is not magically going to bring back that information that the power line noise floor took out. If you had a weak signal down here, somewhere, in the Pekingese, I don't know why, and the power line noise was above that signal, the DSP can't pull that person out. It can help if it's kind of close, and it'll definitely make things a lot clearer, but that person, I said Pekingese, I think I meant Poconos. If that person, let's not even say the Poconos, let's say Thailand. That DX station, you're probably not going to be able to pull them out necessarily. DSPs do a lot of great work, and some of them can do some pretty amazing things, but it's not going to bring back information that your radio has not been received because the noise, power line ignition noise, is too high. T4B13, which of the following is a use for the scanning function on an FM transceiver? A, to check incoming signal deviation, to prevent interference to nearby repeaters. C, to scan through a range of frequencies to check for activity. And D, to check for messages left on a digital bulletin board. Yeah, it is C, to scan through a range of frequencies to check for activity. As we've done with our Baofangs and other radios, we program them up with memories that we can just click a button and scan through. That way, you're constantly listening on just the frequencies where you know your friends are or repeaters are that are of value to you, or just simplex calls that you normally hear people talking on. Loading memories is an incredibly important thing to do for all you technician class licensees holders, or soon to be technician class licensees holders. And I do have a ton of videos that can show you how to do that with many different radios. Well, that's it for Sub-Element T4. I hope this was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed this. I want to know how you think I did on this first round. Should I keep doing them? Maybe just run through all of it through extra in this new format? I'd love your comments if you could post them below. Give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe and hit that bell so that I can send you videos directly and give you a notification for when I go live, which is generally every Saturday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and every other Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for Ham Nation. I'm Josh. You've been watching the Ham Radio Crash Course. Thanks so much for doing so, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.